Good morning, everyone. Is the audio okay? All right. I hope you're doing great, and Fabia's keynote was enjoyable. I'm happy to see so many people here today to discover what's new in Spreadsheet and Dashboard. So my name is François, and I'm the product owner of those two applications. At the end of this presentation, there will be a Q&A session. Feel free to use this QR code to enter the question in the pad. The QR code will be displayed at the end of the presentation as well. So maybe I'm going to start by explaining today's agenda. I'll start by giving you some context about Spreadsheet and Dashboard and why they are available in Odoo. Then I'll explain the goals we try to follow when it comes to develop new features and improve the applications. Then we'll dive into today's main part, which is properly what's new in those two applications. Then I'll wrap everything up so that it's fresh in your memory when we'll have the Q&A session. So in Odoo, you have several applications providing a lot of data. In those applications, you have some respecting reporting, which allows you to already have a proper insight of what you're doing in your business. But sometimes it's not enough. You need a centralized place where to gather all those data in order to crunch the numbers, mix them, add some charts on them, etc., and in the end showcase this into a dashboard so that people in the management can take insightful and well-thought decisions. So that's why Dashboard and Spreadsheet came into play a few years ago. When it comes to the goals that drive us, there are mainly three of them. The first one is to close the gap with other Spreadsheet applications. Spreadsheet applications have been there in the industry for a while now. The idea is not to reinvent the wheel, but to come up with similar features where people can find their habits and properly manage their data into our application. The second objective is to properly integrate with Odoo application. That's what we're going to put on top of those features that you know from other Spreadsheet applications. We add this Odoo layer, which allows you to go further than what you could do in other Spreadsheet applications. Then last but not least, the ergonomics. Using Spreadsheet applications in general is tough and cumbersome. When we develop new features, we try to come up with as easy to use as possible features. So we try to avoid too many clicks. We try to avoid putting too many options in those features so that people don't get lost in them and can be as efficient as possible when crunching those numbers. So that's pretty much what we try to keep in mind when we come to developing new features and improving the applications. So it was short, but I have many things to show you. So what I propose is that we dive directly into a database so that we can see what's been done in the last few months. So here is my database. It's a common retail database. I'm selling comic books for information. We can maybe start by going to our orders, get a pivot view. So in this case, I have the revenue by month. I'm going to add the count of order, and I'm going to insert that into a blank spreadsheet. So hopefully it's okay at the end of the room, you can see properly. So this is the common pivot table you get when you insert data from Odoo. As you can see, behind each value, there is a formula, meaning that in this pivot table, you can, for instance, insert rows and create calculation in between them. So that's pretty handy in some cases, but let's say you're going to add new data, you're going to change the layout of the data. It's going to be annoying because you have to reconstruct every time the pivot. Another issue you have is that here it's stuck, meaning that when I'm going to get the September data, I don't have them appearing automatically. You have to insert row and pre-generate the formula so that when data arrives, they will appear. That's a bit unpractical, let's say. So what we did this year, we came up with a new type of pivot. We call them dynamic pivots. So let's duplicate this one. I'm going to call it dynamic. So the difference you see is that here, I'm going to close that. Here you can see that you have one formula, which is pivot 2. 2 is the ID of the pivot I have. And if you look at all the values, behind those values, it's the same formula that appears. Why? Because it's an array formula. It means that based on this formula, you will get a range of values that will dynamically adapt to the layout you give to the pivot and the data that are available. So it will expand and reduce based on that. But first of all, let's be honest, it's quite ugly. So let's put some style on this one. We came up with a new feature called data tables. It comes with a preset of custom styles, light, medium, and dark. You can create yourself. Let's maybe apply this one so that you can see what you can do. As soon as you put a data table on a list or on a pivot or whatever you want, this option table appears. You can select and toggle different options. You can, for instance, remove the banded rows. You can set or remove the filters. You can put some emphasis on the first column, which is interesting in this case because it's a pivot table. Let's keep it that way. You can change the style. As I mentioned, you can create your own style. You can define a color. Let's use maybe Odoo purple and get this one and confirm. Then you can change the layout. This custom layout will be kept and stored so that you can reuse it really easily to any list or table you want to showcase in a dashboard, for instance. So that's about data table. Let's maybe see what you can do in the pivot properties. So for those who know pivot in Spreadsheet, you can see that the panel evolved quite a lot. So now you have some granularity in the dates, for instance. You could say, okay, I want the pivot to be sorted by year. You could add the same dimension, but say I want only the month, for instance. You could also, well, you could put the year on top if you want. So you can see that it adapts automatically to what we want. You could add the sales team on top. So you can do, it's way easier to create the pivot the way you want rather than using this version, which has its own advantages, but let's be honest, the dynamic one, it's fairly more flexible. Let's remove the sales team for the purpose of my presentation. Here you can see that you have some measures. You can add measures based on any fields you have available in your data source. You can change the aggregate here. You can also show the measure differently. In this case, there is no calculation beside the sum that you decided in the aggregation, but you could maybe say that you want to see the difference. Maybe the difference from the per month. So here you can see that the value automatically changed, and you see the difference compared to the previous month. So as you can see, you have many options that you can set and trigger to show the value the best way to help you take well-thought decision. Let's maybe let's keep it as before. It's going to be easier. But in terms of measure, that's not all. You can now create your own measures in a pivot table. So, for instance, I'm going to create this one. I'm going to call it average revenue. That's something you could do with the static pivot, but the issue is that you cannot revamp the pivot and the measure will not adapt. You will have to redo the calculation. In this case, the measure is automatically added to the pivot. So let's do maybe a simple one. I'm going to take the total divided by the count of order, and that's it. I have my average revenue per month automatically adapted. So if I remove this and say maybe I want it to be shown that way, you can see that it adapts automatically to the dimensions you select. But that's not all. In this case, it's an easy measure. I've taken two fields that were already available in my pivot, but I could maybe use data coming from somewhere else in my spreadsheet. So to do so, I'm going to go to Documents. I'm going to open this spreadsheet. In this spreadsheet, I have a percentage to calculate loyalty points I might want to give to my community. So I'm going to copy that, come back here, add a new sheet. I'm going to call it points. Let's call it here, and I'm going to paste my table here. FYI, I just paste data from a spreadsheet to another one. That's another new feature. Previously, you were not able to do that. So now it means that you can easily import data from outside Odoo, copy them, paste them into your current spreadsheet so that you can use those data into a dashboard. Then let's go back to my pivot here. So I'm going to create my new measure. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to define the points I'm going to grant my community. So let's say I'm going to use the revenue again, and I'm going to multiply this revenue by a percentage that I will find into the table I just imported. So I'm going to use the average cart as an index. I'm going to use this range. I need the percentage which is in the third column. Then I'm going to do this. And I got my points. Obviously, because I multiplied a currency by a percentage, I have a currency. It doesn't make sense for points. And you can easily change the format to the numbers, round it up, and you get all the points that will be credited to the community. So maybe I can now show you what we did. Okay. I can maybe, oops. Hopefully you see better now. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you what we did in terms of graphs. So I'm going to take all this, insert a new chart. So by default, you get this line chart. What I have my revenue versus my count of order. It doesn't make much sense. So maybe we can check what we have as chart type that might better suit my data. So I have the lines, the column, the bars, the area. If I go to the miscellaneous, you can see that we added a population pyramid, which might be interesting when you have some demographics data to show. We have the waterfall chart type for budget management. We have a scatter chart now, which can help you find a trend in a large amount of data. But maybe what I can use is a combo chart. Combo chart is a mix of a bar chart and a line chart. Still doesn't make much sense at the moment, but maybe we can check now what's available in the design panel. If I go to the design panel, I can add a title now. I don't know, revenue versus orders, for instance. I can change the color if I want to. I can move the legend around. You can remove it as well. You can show the values. Doesn't make much sense in this graph, but it's really interesting if you use waterfall or if you use pie chart, for instance. Depending on your need, you might want to enable this or not. Now, if we look at the series, per each series, now you can define a color. So let's maybe use Odoo's purple color. You can add an axis, but we'll do that for the other series. You can rename the series. You can show a trend line. So this is fairly new. So trend line, as its name says, allows you to get a trend on past data. So it's not meant to be predictive, a predictive line, but mostly try to find some trend in a large amount of past data. You can use trend line that are linear, exponential, polynomial, or logarithmic, depending on your needs. You can give it a color. Let's focus on my second series because I can't still see anything from it. Let's change its color to maybe this green, I don't know. And if I click on vertical axis right, you can see that now I created a third axis. And then it makes way much more sense. On my left-hand side, I have an axis for the revenues, and on my right-hand side, I have an axis for the count of order. So makes way much more sense in this case. Last but not least, you can rename each axis, give it some bold, some color, etc. I can maybe close this. Now that I have my nice graph, I can maybe ask my colleague what she thinks about it. So let's maybe ask Anita. Yep. So if I switch to Anita's Discuss application, you can see that she received a notification directly, also there, obviously. She can access the sales report from there and enter the conversation. I'm not going to do that now because it takes a lot of time, but basically it's using the same idea of the chatter, so it works the same way. So if I go back there, let's say she replied. I'm going to access all the comments available on my sheets or a specific sheet. You can select that. And as soon as it's OK, you can resolve the thread, and that's it. Something else you can do, because I didn't show you that, but you might say, OK, there is only one formula to rule all the values, but you can still grab a portion of this pivot, put it there. I'm gonna remove the design. And you can see that now you have the formula behind each value. So you can do exactly the same as you can do in this static pivot. But what I wanted to show you is that we did something else. Where is it? I'm gonna align that on the left. In the conditional formatting. You might have seen that in Fabia's keynote yesterday, but there is a new conditional formatting, which is called data bar, which allows you to set a color, you can maybe use this one, on a range based on another range of value. So if I do this, nope. Should do this to be more accurate. You can see that this conditional formatting shows you the progress based on the revenue I have here. So in your dashboard, I'm going to show you right now, it allows you to come up with dashboard which makes way much more sense. You can highlight more data in your list, in your tables. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to show you today. So let's go back into my PowerPoint. And maybe let's wrap up. I know it's a lot, so I'm going to go back to everything that's available. So first of all, we revamped a lot the pivot. You have no dynamic pivots. I didn't even show you that, but you can create actually pivot from raw data, meaning that if you insert a list from another spreadsheet of raw data, you can create a pivot table from that. And you can use all the fields available as dimension and measures. You can add the calculated value measures on that. I show you that pretty intensively. We added data tables for easy formatting. It's also really interesting from a performance point of view, but that will be explained in the talk coming right after me. We have new charts. So I added some example of charts in there. We have the trend line. We have new customization available in the side panel. You have the comments on cell to notify a colleague so that you can increase the collaboration you can have on your spreadsheets. But there is way more. We have some array operations. I mentioned that a bit in the pivot, for instance. We can actually use array operation in any formula where it initially requires one cell. You can use range, but Vincent will explain that way better than me right after that. You can edit some lists. We added some functions. In the global filters, you can now restrict the values that will be displayed so that you can maybe restrict to a country, to a sales team or whatever. From the version history, you can restore previous data. Let's say you are collaborating in a spreadsheet and someone messed up. You can easily go back in the version history and restore this version. And you can also add a plain text format, for instance. So we have many, many things available. We released a lot of things. So if you have questions on that, I invite you to come and join us at the booth. And we will help you understand better what we did. I'm fairly certain you've seen the quote calculator that Fabien showed in his keynote. Sadly, I don't have the time to show you that today. There was actually a nice talk about it yesterday, so I invite you to check the video on YouTube. We did the same for quality checks. So if you want to know more about that, I would invite you to go to the sales booth or to the manufacturing booth or to come and see us. We will be happy to answer your questions. Then I know that performance is really important for you guys. Every year we get a lot of questions on that. So stay put, because the talk coming right after me will explain you what we did in terms of performance improvement, and also what you can do when creating your spreadsheet to lighten the spreadsheet to avoid being too heavy. And that's it for me. Sorry I had to rush a bit at the end, but hopefully it was clear for everybody.
Congratulations on the live demo. Thank you. Thank you very much. And congratulations on the live demo. We do have lots of questions already. So first question, for the data of a spreadsheet, is it possible to have a domain over a dynamic period? For example, today, 365, so I'm thinking last days, etc.
So yeah, related dates. We are refurbishing the related dates. It was a bit too short for the version 18, but it will come later. We have revamped everything. You'll be able to do way much more that you can do at the moment. And yeah, you'll be able to apply some domains on that as well.
Okay, thank you. When will it be possible to link two spreadsheets to each other?
No, not yet. We started by allowing the copy-pasting from one spreadsheet to another. What we'd like to do afterward is be able to copy also Odoo data, because currently you need to insert the data source so that they be available in a spreadsheet, so you cannot simply copy that. But yeah, linking a spreadsheet is tough, because if you start referencing spreadsheets between each other in terms of performances, it can be quite heavy.
Can you implement triggers, macros?
No, not at the moment. No.
Very straight.
Actually, you could do it, but not in standard, at least, because it's still an open library. So you can create your own formula and stuff like that, but not by standard.
All right. Is it possible to write the data back into the models database?
You mean writing back from spreadsheet to Odoo?
Yeah, I think the question came when you showed the sum and the comparison to the different, compared to the month.
So you can, for instance, the quote calculator, it's basically that. So you're going to put some data from Odoo into a spreadsheet. Then you're going to do some calculation, etc., that might impact the current data, and you can write back into the sales module. We did the same with the quality checks. And basically those bricks that allows you to write back into Odoo are available. But in our opinion, it's each product owner has those bricks in his hand to decide if he wants to use the spreadsheet for improve the data and write back into its own application. So that's not our call to decide if you want to use spreadsheet in specifically with some Odoo applications. So that's more something you have to ask the proper product owner.
All right. For the gauge widget, is it possible to link the gauge widget? The gauge? Like
oh yeah.
One. Is it possible to link the color breaks and maximum settings to a spreadsheet cell rather than using fixed amount?
Not at the moment, but that's something else we plan to do.
All right. Does the data refresh automatically from Odoo, or does it require manual updates?
So if you use the dynamic pivot, it does. But obviously you have to refresh the page, but you don't have to preload some formula as you were doing before. So as soon as you use the dynamic pivot, it will adapt automatically to new data or the removal of data as well.
Question from YouTube here. Can you use functionality?
Je t'entends plus.
Okay, cool. Can you use functionality like Power Query, which exists in Excel, with this app?
No, we don't have any connection with Power BI or any other tool. But we tend to go toward that, so that's a bit the goal we have for spreadsheet and dashboard.
When you export data in a spreadsheet, why is the spreadsheet generated as a static one and not a dynamic one?
When you export...
So when you create first, I think, your spreadsheet,
yeah,
you had to copy-paste, I think, to have the dynamic one.
Okay, so the idea between this is that usually, in most cases, people will insert the pivot to do some easy calculation, quick calculation that you cannot directly do into the Odoo pivot. And then it will just leave the spreadsheet as it is. It's just easy calculation. So we decided to keep this system when inserting from Odoo, but as soon as you have the data source, as you saw, it's fairly easy to duplicate it. You can also reinsert. I didn't show that, but if you go to the data menu, at the bottom you will see you can reinsert in static or reinsert in dynamic. So depending on your needs, you can easily get the dynamic pivot from that.
All right. Maybe one last question then. Where can I learn and teach my team about advanced new spreadsheet and dashboards?
So,
not at your
yeah, we are currently working on the documentation. As you can imagine, it's quite heavy to write. So what I would suggest at the moment is to use our talk like this one as resources. Yesterday, there was one nice talk about dashboarding. So they did quite a complex dashboard, but they cover a lot of features. So usually that's what I tend to offer while waiting for a proper documentation.
Great, thank you very much. I
Sure.
have to stop
Thank
here
you.
with the questions,
Yeah.
but you're available at the booth. Thank you.